learner. In this episode, we are discussing on guidelines for protection and conservation of environment under 5 headings. First one is introduction, second international initiatives on environmental protection and conservation, third major environmental policies and legislation in India, fourth the policies and guidelines to protect environment, and the fifth one Protected Area Management Authority. Ecosystem is defined as responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment and improves the well-being of the local community. Such tourism has low adverse impact on the destination and its environment. It helps to conserve the environment while directly providing economic benefits to local community. Most wilderness areas across India are fragile ecosystems that services to local residents and people living downstream. However, unplanned tourism in such landscapes can destroy the very environment that is compatible with these fragile landscapes. Healthy natural ecosystems are critical to the ecological well-being of all living entities and especially for economic security of people. Ecotourism has the potential to enhance wilderness protection and wildlife conservation, while providing nature compatible livelihoods and greater incomes for a large number of people living around natural ecosystem. This can help to contribute directly to the protection of wildlife or forest areas while making the local community stakeholders and owners in the process. Ecosystem, when practiced correctly, is an important economic and educational activity. It has a scope to link to a wider constituency and build conservation support, while raising awareness about the worth and fragility of such ecosystems in public at large. It also promotes the non-consumptive use of wilderness areas for the benefit of local community. In recent years, the mushrooming of tourist facilities around protected areas has led to the overexploitation of natural areas, disturbance and misuse of fragile ecosystems. It has led to the misuse of ecotourism to the detriment of the ecosystem and towards further alienation of local communities. Therefore, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India has issued directives and guidelines for ecotourism. These guidelines are applicable to any protected areas, whether rural or urban, including national park, wildlife sanctuaries, community reserve, conservation reserves, sacred groves or pilgrimage places located within the protected areas and reserve forest. The basic principles of ecotourism as given in the guidelines are as follows. The first one is adopt low impact tourism that protects ecological integrity of the wilderness areas, secures wildlife values of the destination and its surrounding areas. Second one is highlight the heritage value of India's wilderness and protected areas. Third is build environmental and cultural awareness among the tourists and local community. Fourth one, facilitate sustainability of ecotourism enterprises and other related activities. Fifth is provide livelihood opportunities to local community. Sixth is use indigenous, locally produced and ecologically sustainable materials for tourism activities. Seventh, souvenir shops should sell locally grown and produced items. It is important to involve all stakeholders in implementation of ecotourism guidelines. Synergy and collaboration among the central government, state government, tourism and hospitality sectors, state forest department, protected area management authorities, local communities and civil society institutions is vital for ensuring successful implementation of the guidelines. Each stakeholder should discharge its responsibilities effectively and efficiently. Second is internal initiative of protection and conservation. Stockholm Declaration of 1972 was perhaps the first major attempt to conserve and protect the human environment at the international level. As a consequence of this declaration, the states were required to adopt legislative measures to protect and improve the environment. Accordingly, Indian Parliament inserted two articles, that is 48A and 51A, in the Constitution of India in 1976. 3 Article 42A of the Constitution rightly directs that the state shall endeavour to protect and improve the environment and safeguard forest and wildlife of the country. Similarly, clause of Article 51A imposes a duty on every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. The cumulative effect of Articles 48A and 51A seems to be that the state as well as the citizens both are now under constitutional obligation to conserve, perceive, protect and improve the environment. Every generation owes a duty to all succeeding generations to develop and conserve the natural resources of the nation in the best possible way. The phrase protect and improve, appearing in both the articles 48A and 51A, seems to contemplate an affirmative government action to improve the quality of environment and not just to preserve the environment in its degraded form. Next is Antarctic Treaty System. The Antarctic Treaty System comprises a lot of different treaties that regulate the ways in which nations can interact with Antarctica. Since there is no native population of people that call Antarctica home, there is no technical ownership of the continent. In the past, this has caused a certain amount of concern within the international community as to the possibility of individual nations asserting ownership over the continent. The Antarctic Treaty System presents a framework upon which international relations can be based when it comes to issues regarding Antarctica. The major provisions in the treaty system are to promote free scientific investigations and the banning of all military activity on the entire continent. Due to the strict levels of protection in place, interacting with wildlife or adversely affecting the environment of Antarctica is strictly forbidden. Next is Convention on Biological Diversity. This is a legally binding international treaty whose focus is to promote biological diversity through a number of different methods. Primarily, the treaty seeks to reach its goals through conservation, sustainable use and the equitable sharing of genetic biological resources. This basically means that the treaty is designed to help promote national strategies for conserving biological diversity as well as for its sustainable use. The aspect of the treaty that most directly relates to ecotourism is the provision for the protection of local ecological knowledge and for the creation of educational initiatives. This has led to a growing amount of tourism opportunities throughout many of the areas that have signed and implemented this treaty. The United States of America is the only large developed country in the Western world and one of the only 3 recognized world nations that has not ratified the treaty. Next is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, also known as CITES, CITES, is a treaty which aims to protect wildlife from overexploitation from international trade. The treaty provides different levels of protection for a large list of plants and animal species, working to protect their numbers in the wild. It does this by imposing a specialized permitting system on the transport and trade of specific listed species. By creating these extra hurdles, CITES has created an environment that has had a significant impact on the rampant overexploitation of the species it monitors. The biggest effect that this has had on ecotourism is that it has made the industry much more sustainable. Before the ratification of the treaty, trade in wild animals was largely regulated by local laws, which can sometimes be abhorrently unproductive. By promoting the protection of exotic wild animals, CITES has led to a larger amount of biodiversity, which has in turn made ecotourism more profitable. It is important for tourists to keep these regulations in mind whenever they find themselves in a position to buy animal parts or live animals in local bazaars. Next is Ramsar Convention. The Ramsar Convention is international treaty that creates a structure through which nations can work together toward the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands. The treaty states a number of different social, recreational and ecological functions that wetlands serve and creates a number of provisions to help protect them from overexploitation. The treaty is the largest international effort ever undertaken to promote the health, conservation and study of wetland habitat. One of the largest impacts of this treaty has been an international water quality. Since wetlands act as filters for rainwater and runoff before they run to an aquifer, wetlands are an integral component of a sustainable water cycle. For tourists, a major benefit is not only the protection of genuinely wild landscapes, but also the protection of the many species of birds that rely on this healthy wetland habitat for their survival. For example, Canada alone has protected over 50,000 miles through its involvement in this program. This has led to significantly lower impact on wild bird populations and in turn led to the continuation of the tourism industry that thrives around Canada's birding opportunities. The Brazilian Pantanal, one of the largest wetlands in the world, has also gained a significant level of protection from the Ramsar Convention. Third one, major environment policies and legislations in India. The Ministry of Environment and Forest is a nodal agency in the administrative structure of the central government for the planning, promotion, coordination and overseeing the implementation of environmental and forestry programs. The ministry is also the nodal agency in the country for the United Nations Environment Program, that is UNEP. The principal activities undertaken by Ministry of Environment and Forest consists of conservation and survey of flora, fauna, forests and wildlife, prevention and control of pollution, afforestation and regeneration of degraded areas and protection of environment. In the framework of legislations, the main tools utilized for this includes surveys, impact assessment, control of pollution, regeneration programs, support to organizations, research to solve solutions, and training to augment the requisite manpower, collection and dissemination of environmental information, and creation of environmental awareness among all sectors of the country's population. Next is the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB. It is a statutory organization, was constituted in September 1974 under the Water Act. Further, CPCB was entrusted with the powers and functions under the Air Act. It serves as a field formation and also provides technical services to the Ministry of Environment and Forest of the provisions of the Environment Act. Principles functions of the CPCB as spelled out in Water Act 1974 and the Air Act 1981. They are as follows. The first one, to promote cleanliness of streams and wells in different areas of the states by prevention, control and abatement of water pollution. Second is to improve the quality of air and to prevent, control or abate air pollution in the country. Fourth one, policies and guidelines to protect environment. The Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India has issued the guidelines in 2011, which have to be followed by all the state governments and other statutory bodies in letter and spirit to protect and conserve the ecology and environment. The most important aspects of these guidelines are role of state government. The state government should develop a state level environment strategy and a comprehensive plan for implementation of these guidelines in letter and spirit. The strategy inter alia should ensure wilderness conservation in ecological sensitive landscapes. The destination development process should include the local community. The economic benefit of tourism should be shared equitably with local community. Sound environmental design and use of locally available materials for the project. Conservation education and training to the people involved in ecotourism activities. Adequate monitoring and evaluation system for the impact of ecotourism activities on the local ecology and environment. Taking up capacity building program for local communities in planning, providing and managing ecotourism facilities. The state level ecotourism strategy must be in tune with the framework of guidelines provided by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Ecologically sensitive land use policies should be prescribed for the landscape surrounding protected areas. Adequate provisions must be made to ensure that ecotourism does not get relegated to purely high-end exclusive tourism living out local community. Relevant modifications in the state rules and regulations must be carried out in order to ensure adherence to these standards by destination developers and operators. Next is Protected Area Management Authority. Every state government should establish a Protected Area Management Authority to manage the ecotourism in the protected areas. The gate collection should not be credited to general revenue of the state. The state government can also levy local conservation cess as a percentage on turnover on all private run tourist facilities within 5 kilometers of vicinity of the protected areas. The amount so generated from the gate collection and cess have to be spent for maintaining and conserving the protected areas and livelihood to local community. The Chief Wildlife Warden of the state should develop a comprehensive plan for destination development of the protected each area. He should also take into account the carrying capacity of the destination and develop a monitoring mechanism so that these guidelines are strictly followed. In each destination, the tourism zone and buffer zone should be earmarked. Excluding the buffer zone, the various tourism activities may be developed on a sustainable basis. All these plans should be placed before the concerned state government and it should get approved. Next is protected area management. Each protected area must develop its own ecotourism plan as a part of its tiger conservation plan, management plan, annual plan of operation, which should be duly approved by Chief Wildlife Warden of the state and National Tiger Conservation Authority. The plan should be consistent with the state ecotourism strategy and must be approved by the local advisory committee and the state government. The plan adhered to the following guidelines. Guideline number 1, using GIS system, identify and monitor ecologically sensitive areas, surroundings, protected areas in order to ensure the ecological integrity of corridor or buffer areas and prevent corridor pinching and destruction. Guideline number 2, access carrying capacity of the protected areas at 3 levels. They are physical, real and effective or permissible carrying capacity of visitors and vehicles. Number 3, fix a ceiling level on number of visitors allotted to enter protected areas per day or at a given time based on the carrying capacity of the habitat. Fourth one, indicate the area open to tourism in the reserve to be designated as ecotourism zone. Fifth one, develop a participatory community based tourism synergy in collaboration with local community to ensure long term benefit sharing to local community and promotion of tourism related activities are run by local community. Sixth one, develop standards and other norms for private players in providing tourism facilities located in vicinity of the core or critical wildlife habitats, eco-sensitive zones or buffer zones with a view to ensure sustainable benefits to local community. Seventh one, develop monitoring mechanism to assess impact of tourism activities in the protected areas. Eighth, all ecotourism activities should take only in delineated ecotourism zones included in the ecotourism plan. Next is develop generic guidelines for environmentally acceptable and cultural sustainable practices, particularly for new construction activities in the vicinity of protected areas. And the next is prepare and display a set of do's and don'ts for visitors. Next is local advisor committee. A local advisory committee shall be constituted for each protected area. This committee should consist of the Deputy Commissioner of the district, the local territorial range forest officer, officials of the state tourism department, members of the local panchayat, wildlife scientist, local conservationist, representatives of civil society, etc. This committee can make recommendations to the state governments in the following areas. First one, it can evaluate and review the ecotourism strategy for the particular area and recommend to the government the changes required if any. Second, to ensure site specific restrictions on buildings and infrastructure in private areas in close proximity to protected area, keeping in mind the corridor value. Third, tourism infrastructure must conform to environment friendly, low impact architecture including solar energy, waste recycling, rainwater harvesting, natural cross ventilation, controlled sewage disposal system and merging with the surrounding habitat. Next is to advise local and state government on issues relating to development of ecological tourism in non-forest areas in tourism zones, which are ecologically sensitive. Next is regularly monitor about providing all tourist facilities falling within 5 kilometers of the protected area without disturbing the existing environment. Next is regularly monitor the tour operators that they do not disturb the routine life of the wildlife while taking the visitors to protected areas. All these years, traditional tourism activities has been happening in national parks or sanctuaries, many of which now form part of core or critical tiger habitat or critical wildlife habitat, and they are also taking note of need to implement the provisions of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. The following norms may be adhered to in the context of ecological tourism activities and included in the ecotourism plan of the protected area. General guidelines. The following are the general guidelines for maintaining the ecology and environmental protection and conservation in the tourism areas. The first one, in a phased manner, alternate accommodation arrangements have to be made to the residents who have been living within the protected areas since a long time. They must be properly rehabilitated with suitable employment opportunities. Second is, no fresh settlement to be allowed within the protected areas. Third, protected area authority must ensure that all facilities within 5 kilometer radius of core or critical wildlife habitats or protected areas or reserve forest areas, and they should adhere to all environmental clearance, noise pollution control, etc. Fourth one, there shall be a complete ban on burying or burning or otherwise disposing non-biodegradable or toxic waste in the tourism zone. Fifth one, in case of human-animal conflict, compensations should be paid within a period of 15 days apart from immediate payment of ex gratia. Sixth one, in case of northeastern states, the traditional village councils should be recognized and made responsible for this purpose wherever this council exists. Seventh one, protected area authorities must delineate as minimum area as possible for the visitors' facilities, which should be in a site specific manner. Eighth one, residential tourist facilities, that includes cottages, resorts, rooms, etc., should be in conformity with the carrying capacity of the protected areas. Conclusion: environmental awareness has increased enormously in recent years. Environmental conservation and protection is now a familiar and important issue for all of us. Environmental issue requires us to take broad perspective. Tourism can contribute directly to the conservation of sensitive areas and habitats. Revenue from the tourism can be allocated specifically to pay for the protection and management of environmentally sensitive areas. Thank you.
Thank you.